Sarah Martinez stood at attention in the cold morning air of Fort Carson, Colorado. At 42 years old, she was older than most of the recruits around her by at least 15 years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her brown eyes stayed focused straight ahead, even as she heard the whispers. "What's she doing here?" one young man muttered to his buddy. "Probably somebody's secretary," another replied with a quiet laugh. Sarah said nothing. She had learned a long time ago that words meant very little. Actions were everything. The training program she had joined was called Advanced Tactical Operations. It was designed for military personnel who wanted to move into elite security positions. The course was known for being brutal. Most people who started it never finished. Sergeant Dale Kemper walked down the line of recruits, his boots hitting the pavement with sharp sounds. He was a big man with a thick neck and a permanent scowl on his face. When he reached Sarah, he stopped. "Martinez," he said, looking at his clipboard. "Says here you're 42. "Yes, Sergeant," Sarah replied. Kemper shook his head slowly. "This program is hard on men in their 20s. What makes you think you can handle it?" "I'm here to find out, Sergeant." A few recruits snickered. Kemper's face darkened. "You think this is funny, Martinez. You think you're going to waltz in here and prove something." "No, Sergeant, I'm here to train." Kemper stepped closer, his face inches from hers. "Let me tell you something. I've been running this program for 12 years. I've seen tough guys cry. I've seen athletes quit. And I've never, not once, seen a woman your age make it past week 2. Sarah kept her eyes forward. "Understood, Sergeant." "We'll see how tough you are," Kemper said. He moved on down the line. The first day was designed to break people. They ran 8 miles with 40-pound packs. They did push-ups until their arms shook. They crawled through mud under barbed wire. By lunch, 3 recruits had dropped out. Sarah finished every exercise. Her muscles screamed. Her lungs burned. But she finished. In the mess hall, she sat alone at a table. The younger recruits clustered together, talking and laughing. A few glanced her way and whispered. She pretended not to notice. A young woman named Kelly sat down across from her. She was maybe 25, with red hair and freckles. "You did good out there today," Kelly said. "Thanks," Sarah replied. "So did you." "I'm just trying to keep up. But you made it look easy." Sarah almost smiled. "It wasn't easy." "Then you're a good actress." Kelly took a bite of her sandwich. "I'm Kelly Dawson, by the way." "Sarah Martinez." "Can I ask you something?" Kelly leaned forward. "Why are you doing this? I mean, no offense, but you could be retired by now. Why put yourself through this?" Sarah looked at the younger woman. She saw genuine curiosity, not mockery. "Because I'm not done yet," Sarah said quietly. That afternoon, they had combat training. Sergeant Kemper paired people up for hand-to-hand drills. When he got to Sarah, he smiled coldly. "Martinez, you're with Davis." Corporal Jake Davis stepped forward. He was 6 feet tall and built like a linebacker. He looked at Sarah and actually laughed. "Seriously, Sarge. You got a problem with your partner, Davis." "No, Sergeant. Just seems like a mismatch." "Then it should be easy for you, unless you're saying Martinez might give you trouble." Davis's smile faded. "No, Sergeant." They moved to the mat. The exercise was simple. One person attacks, the other defends and counters. Davis would go first. He came at Sarah fast, throwing a punch that would have knocked out most people. But Sarah wasn't there anymore. She had moved to the side, used his momentum against him, and suddenly Davis was on the ground with Sarah's knee on his back. The watching recruits went silent. Davis got up, his face red. "Lucky shot," he muttered. They went again. This time Davis was more careful. It didn't matter. Within seconds, he was back on the ground. Kemper watched with narrowed eyes. "Switch," he called. "Martinez attacks." Sarah hesitated for just a moment. She didn't want to hurt the young man, but she also knew that holding back would only make things worse. When Kemper gave the signal, Sarah moved. Her strikes were precise and controlled. Davis tried to block, tried to counter, but he couldn't keep up. In less than 10 seconds, Sarah had him in a hold that he couldn't break. "Enough," Kemper said. Sarah released Davis immediately and stepped back. The corporal got to his feet, breathing hard. He wouldn't look at her. Kemper walked over to Sarah. His expression was unreadable. "Where did you learn to fight like that, Martinez?" "Here and there, Sergeant." "Here and there," Kemper repeated. He studied her for a long moment. "We'll talk about this later. Everyone pair up. Let's see what else you've got." As the training continued, Sarah noticed the way Kemper kept watching her. There was something in his eyes now, not respect exactly, but suspicion. He didn't like surprises, and Sarah Martinez was definitely a surprise. That evening, as the recruits headed to their barracks, Sarah heard footsteps behind her. "Hey, Martinez," a voice called. She turned to see 3 male recruits walking toward her. Davis was in the middle. "You made me look like a fool today," Davis said. "That wasn't my intention," Sarah replied calmly. "I don't care about your intentions. I care about respect, and you need to learn your place here." "My place is the same as yours. I'm a recruit in this program." One of the other men, a tall guy with a shaved head, stepped forward. "You don't belong here, lady. This isn't a place for old women trying to prove something." Sarah felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the anger that she had learned to control years ago. She took a slow breath. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to train." "Well, maybe you should train somewhere else," Davis said, "before you get hurt." It wasn't quite a threat, but it was close. Sarah looked at each of them in turn. "Good night, gentlemen," she said and walked away. Behind her, she heard them laughing. Let them laugh, she thought. She had dealt with worse than hurt feelings and wounded pride. Much worse. The next morning started with a surprise inspection. Sergeant Kemper went through each recruit's locker, looking for any sign of disorder or contraband. When he got to Sarah's locker, he spent extra time checking everything. "Where's your personal phone, Martinez?" he asked. "Locked in storage, Sergeant, as required." "Letters from home?" "None, Sergeant." Kemper pulled out her neatly folded uniforms, checking each one. "No pictures, no keepsakes, nothing." "No, Sergeant." He looked at her with those suspicious eyes again. "Everyone has something from their life before. Family, friends, something." Sarah stood at attention, saying nothing. Kemper slammed the locker shut. "Move out. We've got a 10-mile run." The run was brutal. The course went up into the hills around the base, climbing steep trails and crossing rocky terrain. By mile 5, several recruits were struggling. By mile 8, 2 more had dropped out. Sarah kept pace with the lead group. Her legs ached and her lungs felt like they were on fire, but she pushed through. She had learned long ago how to separate her mind from her body's pain. Kelly Dawson was falling behind. Sarah could hear her labored breathing. When Kemper wasn't looking, Sarah dropped back. "Stay with me," Sarah said quietly. "Match my breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth." "I can't," Kelly gasped. "Go ahead." "We finished together," Sarah said firmly. "Now breathe with me." They made it to the finish line side by side. Kemper was waiting with his stopwatch and his scowl. "Dawson, you barely made the cutoff time," he barked. "Martinez, you could have finished 5 minutes earlier. Why didn't you?" "I chose not to, Sergeant." "You chose not to." Kemper's face reddened. "This isn't a team-building exercise, Martinez. This is individual performance. You want to be a hero, join the fire department." "Yes, Sergeant." But Kelly gave Sarah a grateful look that said more than words could. That afternoon brought weapons training. They moved to the shooting range with M4 rifles. This was something Sarah knew well, too well, but she was careful. She didn't want to show too much too soon. She scored well, but not perfectly, just good enough to be in the top quarter of recruits. Kemper noticed anyway. "Decent grouping, Martinez," he said, examining her target. "You shoot before." "Some, Sergeant." "Some," he handed her the rifle. "Do it again." Sarah loaded a fresh magazine and aimed downrange. She put 5 rounds through the center of the target, each shot within inches of the last. "Interesting," Kemper said. Most people get better with practice, not worse. Your first round was less accurate than your second. Sarah said nothing. She had made a mistake and she knew it. That evening, Kemper called her to his office. It was a small room with a metal desk and filing cabinets. A single window looked out over the training grounds. Sit, Kemper ordered. Sarah sat. Kemper leaned back in his chair, studying her. I pulled your file, Martinez. Standard Army background. Served 8 years, got out as a specialist. Worked civilian jobs for the last 14 years. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, you apply for this program. Why? I wanted a change, Sergeant. A change? Kemper tapped his fingers on the desk. Your file is very basic, almost too basic. No special training listed. No combat deployments. Nothing that explains what I saw on that mat yesterday or on the range today. I had good teachers, Sergeant. Who? Sarah met his eyes. People who don't like attention. Kemper's jaw tightened. You know what I think, Martinez? I think you're hiding something. I think there's more to your story than what's in this file, and I don't like mysteries in my program. I'm just here to train, Sergeant. We'll see about that. Kemper leaned forward. I'm going to be watching you very closely. If you screw up, if you break one rule, if you give me one reason, I'll remove you from this program so fast your head will spin. Do you understand? Yes, Sergeant. Dismissed. Sarah stood and left the office. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of staying calm. She had known this would be difficult. She just hadn't expected Kemper to be so persistent. The truth was, Sarah's file was basic because it was supposed to be. Her real service record was classified at a level that Sergeant Kemper would never have clearance to see, and it needed to stay that way. Back in the barracks, the atmosphere was tense. Several recruits were packing their bags, having quit the program. The ones who remained looked exhausted and discouraged. Davis and his friends sat on their bunks, talking in low voices. When Sarah walked in, they stopped and stared at her. Teacher's pet, one of them muttered. Sarah ignored them and went to her own bunk. She pulled out her training manual and began to read. Kelly came over and sat on the edge of Sarah's bunk. They're saying Kemper called you in for a private meeting. What was that about? Just going over my file, Sarah said. Are you in trouble? No more than usual. Kelly lowered her voice. Sarah, I have to ask, where did you really learn to fight like that? Nobody moves the way you do without serious training. Sarah closed her book and looked at the younger woman. Kelly had kind eyes, honest eyes. I had a different life before this, Sarah said carefully. But that life is over now. I'm just trying to start fresh. Must have been some life. It was. Kelly was quiet for a moment. Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. You helped me today when you didn't have to. That means something. After Kelly left, Sarah lay on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the real reason she was here, the truth she couldn't tell anyone. 3 months ago, she had received a message through a secure channel. It was from an old friend, someone she had served with in another life. The message was simple. There's a mole in the Advanced Tactical Operations program at Fort Carson. Someone is leaking classified training methods to foreign interests. We need someone on the inside. We need you. Sarah had retired from that other life 14 years ago. She had buried that person deep and built a quiet, normal existence. But some debts could never be repaid. Some duties never ended. So she had said yes. She had applied for the program under her real name, but with a sanitized file. And now she was here, looking for a traitor while trying not to blow her own cover. The problem was Sergeant Kemper. He was smart and suspicious. If he kept digging, kept pushing, he might discover things that would ruin everything. Sarah closed her eyes and took a slow breath. She had survived much worse than a suspicious sergeant. She would find the mole, complete her mission, and disappear again. Week 2 began with water survival training. The recruits were bused to a facility with a large pool designed to simulate ocean conditions. Waves, cold water, and underwater obstacles made it one of the most feared parts of the program. Sergeant Kemper stood at the edge of the pool, his voice echoing off the walls. "This exercise separates the swimmers from the drowners," he announced. "You'll be in full gear, you'll be weighted down, and you'll need to swim 200 meters while completing obstacles underwater. If you panic, if you freeze, you fail. If you fail, you're out of the program." Sarah noticed several recruits looking nervous. Even Davis seemed worried. "Martinez," Kemper called out, "you're up first." Of course she was. Kemper was testing her again. Sarah put on the weighted vest and helmet. Together, they added 50 pounds to her body weight. She climbed onto the platform and looked down at the dark, churning water. "Ready?" Kemper asked. "Yes, Sergeant." "Go." Sarah jumped. The cold water hit her like a hammer. The weights pulled her down immediately. For a moment, everything was chaos: bubbles, darkness, the roar of the wave machines. Then training kicked in. Sarah's mind cleared. She oriented herself, found the first underwater obstacle, and began to swim. The obstacles were designed to induce panic. Narrow tunnels, nets to swim under, bars to navigate through. Each one challenged a recruit's ability to stay calm while their lungs burned and their muscles screamed. Sarah moved through them methodically. She had done this kind of training before, though in much worse conditions. This pool was cold, but it wasn't the Arctic Ocean. These obstacles were challenging, but they weren't booby-trapped. She surfaced at the end point, breathing hard but controlled. The timer showed she had completed the course in excellent time. Kemper's expression revealed nothing. "Next," he called. One by one, the recruits attempted the course. Some made it. Others panicked halfway through and had to be pulled out by safety divers. Davis barely finished, coming up gasping and pale. Kelly went last. Sarah watched from the side, wrapped in a towel. The young woman entered the water with determination, but Sarah could see the fear in her eyes. Kelly made it through the first two obstacles. Then she hit the third, a narrow tunnel that required swimming horizontal underwater for 20 feet. She went in, but didn't come out. Bubbles erupted on the surface. She was panicking. The safety diver started to move, but Sarah was faster. She dropped her towel and dove back into the pool, still wearing her weighted vest. She found Kelly in the tunnel, thrashing and disoriented. Sarah grabbed her, made eye contact, and showed her which way was out. Together, they swam through the tunnel and surfaced. Kelly coughed and gasped, clinging to the pool edge. "I've got you," Sarah said. "You're okay." Kemper was waiting when they climbed out. His face was dark with anger. "Martinez, what the hell was that?" "She needed help, Sergeant." The safety diver would have handled it. By the time he got there, she might have been seriously hurt. "That's not your call to make," Kemper's voice bounced off the walls. "You don't just jump into the pool when you feel like it. There are protocols, there are rules, and you broke them." Sarah stood at attention, water dripping from her clothes. "Yes, Sergeant." "You're on report, Martinez. One more incident like this and you're done. Understood." "Understood, Sergeant." But as Sarah walked away, Kelly whispered, "Thank you." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The incident at the pool had drawn even more attention to her. She needed to blend in, to be invisible while she investigated. Instead, she kept standing out. She got up and walked to the bathroom. The barracks were quiet. Most of the recruits were exhausted from the day's training. As she passed the common area, she noticed a light on in the supply room. The door was slightly open. Sarah moved closer and heard voices. "Just need another week," someone was saying. A male voice, but speaking quietly enough that Sarah couldn't identify it. "You've had 3 weeks already," another voice replied. This one was female. "They're getting impatient. If you can't deliver the updated combat protocols, they'll find someone who can." Sarah's pulse quickened. She moved closer to the door, careful to stay silent. "I'm telling you, Kemper keeps the sensitive files locked down tight. It's not as easy as you think." "Then find a way to make it easy. You're being paid well enough." There was a pause. Sarah held her breath. "There's someone new who might be a problem," the male voice said. "Martinez, she's older but she's good." too good, and Kemper is suspicious of her. Is she a threat to us? I don't know, but I'm watching her. Footsteps approached the door. Sarah moved quickly, sliding into the shadows of a nearby corridor. Two figures emerged from the supply room. She could only see their silhouettes in the dim light. One was definitely male, average height. The other was female, taller. They walked away in opposite directions. Sarah couldn't see their faces. She stood in the darkness, her mind racing. She had found evidence of the mole, but she didn't know who it was. The male voice could have been any one of a dozen male recruits, and the female voice was equally anonymous. Worse, they knew about her. They were watching her. Sarah returned to her bunk. She lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of sleeping recruits around her. Somewhere in this room was a traitor, someone who was selling out their country for money. And now that traitor knew Sarah Martinez might be a problem. The next morning brought a new challenge, a 72-hour field exercise in the mountains. The recruits would be divided into teams, given minimal supplies, and required to complete a series of objectives while surviving in the wilderness. Kemper announced the team assignments. Sarah found herself grouped with Davis, Kelly, and two other recruits named Peters and Cho. Davis looked unhappy. "Great," he muttered, "stuck with the old lady." "You got something to say, Davis?" Kemper asked sharply. "No, Sergeant." "Good, because if I hear any complaints about team assignments, the whole team gets penalty points. Clear?" "Yes, Sergeant." They loaded into trucks and drove 2 hours into the mountains. The drop-off point was remote, nothing but pine trees and rocky trails. The temperature was already dropping, and dark clouds threatened rain. Kemper gave them their instructions. "You have a map, a compass, and basic supplies. You need to reach 3 checkpoints over the next 3 days. At each checkpoint, you'll complete a task. Teams that fail to reach all checkpoints or fail any task are eliminated from the program. Any questions?" No one spoke. "Good luck," Kemper said with a cold smile. "You're going to need it." The trucks drove away, leaving the teams alone in the wilderness. Davis immediately grabbed the map. "Okay, I'll navigate. Peters, you're on water. Cho, you handle the food supplies." "What about me?" Kelly asked. "You can carry the medical kit. Try not to slow us down." "And me?" Sarah asked quietly. Davis looked at her. "Just try to keep up Martinez." Sarah said nothing. She had learned that real leadership revealed itself through actions, not arguments. They started hiking. The first checkpoint was supposed to be 8 miles away. The terrain was rough, steep climbs, loose rocks, and dense forest. After 2 hours, Davis stopped and looked at the map, frowning. "Something wrong?" Peters asked. "We should have hit the river by now," Davis said. "According to this, there should be a river crossing right here." Sarah looked around. She could hear running water, but it was behind them, not ahead. "We're going the wrong way," she said quietly. Davis's face reddened. "No, we're not. I know how to read a map." "The map is oriented north. You've been holding it sideways." "Are you calling me stupid?" "I'm saying we need to turn around." "I'm the team leader, Martinez. We go the direction I say." Sarah looked at the others. Kelly seemed worried. Peters and Cho just looked confused. "If we continue this direction," Sarah said calmly, "we'll miss the first checkpoint entirely. We'll fail the exercise." Davis stepped close to her. "Listen to me very carefully. I don't care how tough you think you are. I don't care about your little martial arts tricks. On this team, I'm in charge. And if you question me again, I'll make sure Kemper knows you're the reason we failed. Got it?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked past him at something in the distance. "We have a bigger problem," she said. "What are you talking about?" Sarah pointed. Dark clouds were rolling in fast, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. "Storm's coming. A bad one. We need shelter now." Davis looked at the sky and paled. "We push through. We can make it to the checkpoint." "Not before that storm hits." "I said we push through." But nature didn't care about Davis's ego. 20 minutes later, the storm hit with fury. Rain poured down in sheets. Lightning cracked across the sky. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in as many minutes. The team huddled under a rocky overhang, soaked and shivering. Davis's face was pale, his earlier confidence gone. Sarah assessed the situation. They were all at risk of hypothermia. They needed shelter, warmth, and dry clothes. And she was the only one who seemed to know what to do. She made a decision. This mission, finding the mole, was important, but keeping these young people alive was more important. "Listen to me," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the storm. "If we want to survive this, you need to follow my instructions exactly. No arguments, no ego. Can you do that?" Kelly nodded immediately. Peters and Cho looked relieved. Davis hesitated, then finally nodded. Sarah moved quickly, giving orders with calm authority. "Peters, Cho, gather any dry wood you can find under trees. Look for dead branches that haven't touched the ground. Kelly, I need you to clear a space here and dig a small pit for a fire. Davis, check everyone's packs for dry clothes and get the emergency blanket." For once, Davis didn't argue. The severity of their situation had broken through his pride. Within 30 minutes, Sarah had them organized. She built a fire using a technique that worked even with damp wood, starting with the driest kindling and carefully nursing it to life. The flames caught, and blessed warmth began to spread. "How did you know how to do that?" Kelly asked, her teeth chattering. "Learned it a long time ago," Sarah replied, helping Kelly move closer to the fire. The storm raged for 3 hours. During that time, Sarah kept everyone busy and focused. She had them rotate positions near the fire to ensure everyone stayed warm. She rationed their food and water. She kept their spirits up with calm conversation. Davis watched her with a strange expression. The cockiness was gone, replaced by something like respect or maybe embarrassment. When the storm finally passed, Sarah checked her watch. "We've lost 4 hours. We need to move fast if we want to make the first checkpoint before dark." "I'll navigate," Davis said quietly. He looked at Sarah. "If that's okay with you." Sarah handed him the compass. "Just remember to keep the map oriented north." Davis almost smiled. "Yeah, I got it now." They made good time on the trail. The storm had cooled the air, making the hiking easier. Sarah noticed that the team dynamic had changed. Instead of Davis barking orders, they worked together. Peters and Cho asked Sarah questions about wilderness survival. Kelly walked beside her, clearly feeling safer. They reached the first checkpoint just as the sun was setting. A sealed container held their first task, a series of codes they needed to decrypt using a cipher key. Sarah hung back and let the others work on it. She didn't want to draw more attention to herself, but after 20 minutes of watching them struggle, she couldn't help but offer a suggestion. "Try reading the cipher key backwards," she said. Davis frowned, then tried it. His eyes widened. "That's it, that's the pattern." They solved the code and documented their completion. The message revealed the coordinates for the second checkpoint, another 8 miles away. "We should camp here for the night," Davis said. "Move out at first light." Everyone agreed. They set up their basic camp, no tents, just sleeping bags and the emergency blanket rigged as a lean-to. Sarah took the first watch while the others slept. The night was clear and cold. Stars filled the sky. Sarah sat by the low fire, alert and thinking. She kept replaying the conversation she had overheard in the supply room. The voices had mentioned combat protocols and sensitive files. That meant the mole had access to classified training materials. But who? It couldn't be another recruit. They wouldn't have access. It had to be someone with clearance, an instructor maybe, or someone in administration. But then why did the voice say, "Kemper keeps the sensitive files locked down tight"? That suggested the mole wasn't Kemper himself. Sarah's thoughts were interrupted by movement. Davis was awake, walking over to join her. "Can't sleep," he said quietly. "It's the adrenaline. Give it time." Davis sat down across from her. For a long moment he was silent. Then he spoke. "I need to say something. I've been an ass to you since day one. You didn't deserve that." Sarah looked at him. What changed? That storm, the way you handled it. Davis shook his head. I thought I knew everything. I thought being strong and loud made me a leader. But watching you today, you never raised your voice, never bragged, just did what needed to be done. That's real leadership. You kept your team alive too, Sarah said. You listened when it mattered. Only after I almost got us lost. Davis poked at the fire with a stick. Can I ask you something? Where did you really learn all this? The fighting, the survival skills, the way you think 10 steps ahead. Sarah considered her answer carefully. I served in a unit that required specialized training. That's all I can say. Special forces. I can't talk about it. Davis nodded slowly. Fair enough, but just so you know, you've got my respect now, and my apology. Apology accepted. After Davis returned to his sleeping bag, Sarah continued her watch. The conversation had been genuine and she appreciated it, but it also reminded her how isolated she was. She couldn't have real friendships here. She couldn't let people get close. The mission came first. The next 2 days passed in a blur of hiking, problem-solving, and survival. The team completed the second and third checkpoints successfully. They worked together smoothly now, with Sarah offering guidance when needed, but letting others take the lead when possible. On the final day, as they hiked back to the extraction point, Kelly fell into step beside Sarah. I've been thinking, Kelly said. After this program, I want to do what you do. I want to be like you. Sarah felt a pang in her chest. Kelly, you don't even know what I do. I know you're brave. I know you're skilled. I know you help people. That's enough for me. The life I led, it cost me things. Important things. Family, friends, a normal existence. I don't recommend it. But you saved people, right? You made a difference. Sarah thought about the missions she had run, the operations she had been part of, the classified work that would never appear in any history book. Yes, she said quietly, I made a difference. Then it was worth it. If only it were that simple, Sarah thought. They reached the extraction point to find Sergeant Kemper waiting with the trucks. His face was unreadable as he checked them in. You're the third team to complete all checkpoints, he announced. Good work. Back at the base, the recruits who had survived the field exercise were given a day to rest and recover. Sarah used the time to continue her investigation. She gained access to the administrative building by volunteering to help file paperwork. While there, she carefully observed the staff, who had access to sensitive files, who seemed nervous or acted suspiciously. She noticed a pattern. Major Linda Vance, the program's administrative officer, often worked late. She had access to all the training files, and twice, Sarah saw her having quiet conversations with recruits that ended when others approached. But Sarah needed proof, not suspicion. That night, she waited until the barracks were quiet, then slipped out. She made her way to the administrative building. The lights were off, but Sarah knew how to pick a lock. Inside Major Vance's office, Sarah searched quickly and efficiently. She found the file cabinet, picked that lock too, and began scanning documents by the light of her phone. Most were routine, training schedules, equipment inventories, personnel files. But then Sarah found a folder labeled Tactical Protocols Update Restricted. She photographed several pages. The documents showed detailed combat techniques, equipment specifications, and strategic methods. Exactly the kind of information that foreign intelligence would pay well for. Sarah was about to leave when she heard voices in the hallway. She quickly closed the cabinet and moved to the window. The voices were getting closer. Need to be more careful, someone was saying. Major Vance's voice. I am being careful, a male voice replied. But that Martinez woman is a problem. She's not who she claims to be. Sarah's blood ran cold. She recognized the voice now. It was Corporal Peters, one of her teammates from the field exercise. They were right outside the office door. Sarah slipped out the window just as she heard a key in the lock. She dropped to the ground below and pressed herself against the building's wall, hidden in shadow. Through the window, she saw Major Vance and Peters enter the office. They sat down at the desk. What do you mean she's not who she claims to be? Vance asked. I mean, her file doesn't add up. She fights like special forces. She has skills that take decades to develop, but her record shows she was just a regular soldier. Kemper's already suspicious of her. Maybe we should report her, say she's hiding something, get her kicked out before she discovers us. Vance was quiet for a moment. No, if we report her, it draws attention. And if she really is undercover for someone, removing her might alert whoever sent her. Better to watch her. If she gets too close, we'll handle it another way. Sarah felt ice in her veins. These weren't just thieves selling information. They were willing to handle threats. That meant they were dangerous. She moved away from the building carefully, staying in the shadows. She needed to report this, but to whom? She couldn't blow her cover. Not yet. Not until she had solid evidence. Back in her bunk, Sarah lay awake, her mind racing. She had identified the mole, or rather the moles, Peters and Vance, but they knew she was a threat. They were watching her. And somewhere in this equation was Sergeant Kemper, who suspected her but didn't know the whole truth. Sarah realized she was running out of time. She needed to make her move soon. But one wrong step, and she would lose everything, including possibly her life. The next morning, Sergeant Kemper called everyone to the training grounds. His expression was grave. "I have an announcement," he said. "We've had a security breach. Classified training materials have been copied without authorization. Until we identify the person responsible, this program is under lockdown. No one leaves the base. No personal communications. We will be conducting interviews with all personnel." Sarah felt every muscle tense. The moles had been discovered, or at least their activities had been noticed. This changed everything. Peters stood in the formation, his face carefully neutral. Sarah knew he was probably panicking inside. After the announcement, Kemper dismissed everyone except Sarah. "Martinez, my office, now." Sarah followed him, her mind working through scenarios. Did he suspect her of the breach, or did he want to question her as a witness? In his office, Kemper closed the door and turned to face her. His expression was hard. "I'm going to ask you a direct question, Martinez, and I want a direct answer. Who are you really?" Sarah made a decision. She had to take a calculated risk. "I need to make a phone call, Sergeant, to a specific number. It's the only way I can answer your question properly." Kemper's eyes narrowed. "What kind of number?" "A secure line, to the Pentagon." For a long moment, Kemper just stared at her. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. "Get me Colonel Hayes in security operations." He waited, then spoke again. "Colonel, this is Sergeant Kemper at Fort Carson. I have a recruit who claims she needs to call the Pentagon on a secure line." He paused, listening. "Her name is Sarah Martinez." Sarah watched Kemper's face change as he listened. His eyes widened slightly. His jaw tightened. When he finally hung up, he looked at Sarah with a completely different expression. "Colonel Hayes is personally coming here within the hour. He told me to keep you secure and not to let you out of my sight. He also told me I don't have clearance to know who you are. So I'm going to ask you again, who the hell are you, Martinez?" "Someone who's trying to help, Sergeant." Kemper sat down heavily. "This security breach, you know something about it, don't you?" "I know who's responsible, but I need to wait for Colonel Hayes before I say more." "Is it one of my recruits?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Kemper's hands formed fists on his desk. "You've been investigating my program. That's why you're really here." "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you, Sergeant, but the mission required absolute secrecy." "Mission?" Kemper laughed bitterly. "I thought you were just some middle-aged woman trying to prove something. I was wrong about a lot of things, wasn't I?" Before Sarah could respond, there was a knock at the door. A military police officer entered. "Sergeant Kemper, we need to speak with you. There's been an incident. Corporal Peters attempted to leave the base without authorization. He's been detained." Kemper stood immediately. "Where is he?" "In holding, sir." Kemper looked at Sarah. "Come with me. Colonel Hayes said not to let you out of my sight." They found Peters in a small holding room, seated at a table with an MP standing guard. When Peters saw Sarah, his face went pale. "She knows," he said immediately. She's been watching us. She's some kind of spy. Quiet, Kemper ordered. He looked at the MP. Has he said anything else? Just keeps asking for a lawyer, sir. Sarah stepped forward, looking at Peters. Where's Major Vance? Peters' eyes darted away. I don't know what you're talking about. She was your contact. She had access to the files you were selling. Where is she? I want a lawyer, Peters repeated. Kemper's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face darkened. Secure the area, I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Sarah. Major Vance just tried to leave the base in a civilian vehicle. She's been stopped at the gate. She had a USB drive with her containing classified files. You need to get that drive, Sarah said, and you need to find out who she was planning to give it to. Kemper was about to respond when Colonel Hayes arrived. He was a tall man in his 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. He looked at Sarah and nodded. Commander Martinez, he said formally. The room went silent. Kemper's mouth actually fell open. Commander, he repeated. Colonel Hayes ignored him. What's the situation, Martinez? Sarah quickly briefed him on what she had discovered. Major Vance and Corporal Peters working together to steal and sell classified training protocols. The overheard conversation. The documents in Vance's office. We have Peters in custody and Vance at the gate with evidence, Hayes said. Good work, but we need to identify their buyer. Any leads? They mentioned someone getting impatient. They were supposed to deliver this week. That suggests a meeting was planned soon. Hayes made a phone call, giving orders to have Vance's communications monitored and her contacts traced. Kemper was still staring at Sarah. Commander Martinez, as in Navy commander, as an officer rank that takes 15 years minimum to achieve. Hayes looked at him. Sergeant, Commander Martinez is actually Captain Martinez, retired. She was a Navy SEAL for 18 years before she retired 4 years ago. Her service record is classified at the highest levels. When we received intelligence about a mole in your program, we asked her to come out of retirement to investigate. Kemper sat down slowly. A Navy SEAL? You were a Navy SEAL. Sarah said nothing. There are only a handful of women who have ever completed SEAL training, Hayes continued. Captain Martinez was one of the first. She served on missions I can't discuss, in places I can't name, doing things that will never be declassified. And you've been treating her like she didn't belong here. I didn't know, Kemper said quietly. Her file was sanitized for this mission. You weren't supposed to know. No one was. Kemper looked at Sarah with something like awe. All those times I questioned you, doubted you, told you that you didn't belong, you could have told me the truth. You could have pulled rank. That would have compromised the mission, Sarah said simply. News spread fast through the base. By evening, everyone knew that the quiet, older recruit named Martinez was actually a retired Navy SEAL captain who had uncovered a spy ring. The recruits gathered in the barracks, and when Sarah entered, they fell silent. Davis stood up first. Ma'am, he said, standing at attention. At ease, Sarah said. I'm not your commanding officer, I'm just another recruit. With all due respect, ma'am, you're not just anything. Davis looked ashamed. I gave you hell from day one. I questioned your abilities, I tried to undermine you, and all along you were. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Kelly stepped forward, tears in her eyes. You saved my life in that pool, and during the field exercise you kept us all alive, and you never once made us feel stupid for not knowing what you knew. Sarah felt emotion rising in her chest. You all did the work, I just helped guide you. Why did you come back? Another recruit asked. You were retired, you didn't have to do this. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Because when your country asks, you answer, and because there are some fights worth having, no matter your age. Over the next few days, Major Vance and Corporal Peters were fully interrogated. The investigation revealed they had been selling information to a foreign intelligence service for over a year. The buyer was identified and arrested in a coordinated operation. Sergeant Kemper requested a private meeting with Sarah. I owe you an apology, he said. Actually, I owe you about 100 apologies. You were doing your job, Sergeant. You were suspicious because something didn't add up. That's good instincts. I was suspicious because I'm prejudiced. I saw an older woman and assumed she couldn't handle the training. I was wrong. Kemper paused. Colonel Hayes told me about some of your service record, the parts I'm cleared to know. You've done more for this country than I ever will. Different paths, same service, Sarah said. Will you stay and complete the program? Sarah shook her head. My mission is done. It's time for me to go back to my quiet life. That seems like a waste of your skills. Maybe, but I've had my time in the fight. Now it's time for the next generation. She smiled slightly. Keep pushing them, Sergeant, but maybe be a little less quick to judge what people are capable of. Kemper actually smiled. Yes, ma'am. On Sarah's last day, the remaining recruits gathered to see her off. Kelly hugged her tightly. You changed my life, Kelly whispered. You showed me what's possible. You did that yourself, Sarah replied. I just gave you a little push. Davis shook her hand firmly. Thank you for the lesson in humility, ma'am. I needed it. Use it well. As Sarah walked to the car that would take her away from Fort Carson, she passed the training grounds where new recruits were running their first obstacle course. They looked young and scared and determined. She had been like them once, young and eager to prove herself. Now she was older, quieter, and maybe a little wiser. But the core remained the same, the commitment to serve, to protect, to stand up when called. Sarah Martinez drove away from the base and back toward her civilian life. She would return to her small apartment, her quiet routine, her anonymity. But she smiled as she drove because she knew the truth. Age hadn't diminished her. Retirement hadn't erased her skills. And when her country needed her, she had answered the call and completed the mission. She was a Navy SEAL. That didn't change just because she got older. That would never change. 6 months later, Sarah received a letter. It was from Kelly, who had successfully completed the Advanced Tactical Operations Program. She had been assigned to a security detail protecting diplomatic personnel overseas. I think about what you taught me every day, Kelly wrote. Not just the skills, but the attitude. Stay calm, stay focused. Never let anyone tell you what you can't do. You changed my life, Sarah. I hope I can do the same for someone else someday. Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer with a few other mementos from her long career. Then she went about her quiet day, just another middle-aged woman in a small American town. But those who knew the truth understood that Sarah Martinez was anything but ordinary. She was a warrior who had served in silence, fought in shadows, and sacrificed a normal life for something greater.